How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. Hope everyone out there had a lovely Thanksgiving and Black Friday. Hope you got all the stuff you wanted. Didn't get any fights in Walmart. Joining me, as he often does, is Nick Rice. How's it going, man? How was your Thanksgiving?
Going pretty good. I made a pretty rough mistake. I wanted a haircut, and instead I got a buzz cut because it does not look – I am still Nick Rice, even though I don't look like it right now. I got the old Justin Herbert fade right now.
Yeah, you went from not wanting your team to draft him to looking like him. So I wouldn't be surprised if the next, show you're wearing his jersey.
Yeah, that would be crazy if it happened, for sure. But either way, I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to our quarterly report, and let's get it going.
So we'll start here, too, with Thanksgiving. Did you guys take part in any turkey bowl, any backyard football like most good Americans do?
I mean, come on. I wouldn't be American if I didn't play football. It was not quite what it usually is. Our group didn't want to all get together this year, unfortunately. Every year I go to the park, play some tackle football. Once a year I'll get some blood, I'll get some scratches, get dents and bruises here and there. But I mean, just as you said, man, I'm not American unless I do that. What about yourself there, Phil?
So ours was the total opposite. I went out to the park and I was met by 30 people. So we got to the point where we did a mini tournament. We had 4 teams comprised of those 30 people, and we did a little mini tournament. So that worked out. That was fun. I didn't like – I'm sorry, what?
Oh, how'd you do in it?
I did all right. Last year I had the game of my life. I got stuck playing quarterback, and I didn't suck, so I'm going to call that the game of my life. But this year there were so many people, it was just a matter of, if you caught a pass or two, like you're lucky because there were so many people out there. I did have a huge pass breakup in the back of the end zone. I think that was my biggest play this year. What I was doing playing corner, I'll have no idea. I'll have to question my defensive coordinator on that one.
That's right. Yeah.
But no, it was good. It was good to get out there. We are hitting the age. This is the first year we've transitioned to flag football for the whole group, and I think overall that works out better. I don't mind. I'm with you. I don't mind doing the tackle once a year. Like, I don't know, next year we might have to switch back. But a lot of the guys, that I used to play with, are even older than I am. So they're making that call, and, it works out. I mean, when you've won 2 flag football championships like I have, you don't mind playing flag football,
It's just something a very rare group enjoys the process of. But, I mean, either way, I'm just considering I didn't gain 10 pounds. That's a win. I gained about 5, which is what everybody does. So, it was great to get people together. And, Thanksgiving is a wonderful time of year.
That was a successful goal for me, too. Like, I ate plenty, don't get me wrong, but I didn't have to roll out of my grandmother's house, which is always the goal, is to – if you can walk out on your own power, then you did fine, I think.
There you go. I mean, I had to roll out, but it wasn't because of the food. But, whatever. It is what it is. Okay.
So, week 12 now, where other than tonight and a game later in the week, we now have figured out NFL is 12 weeks through. This is our 3 quarters way through the season here. Week 12, I think the biggest game. I had a couple of shockers this week. The Raiders getting blown out by the Falcons, for example. That Panthers-Vikings game ended up weirdly entertaining and whatnot. But I think the biggest storyline from this past week, we'll start here, was the Bucs and Chiefs game. And if you didn't watch it and you look at the score, you think, oh, another classic between Brady and Mahomes, because the Chiefs won by 3. And if you actually bet the Chiefs, you would have lost because the spread was 3.5 or whatnot. But if you watch the game, this game was not close, and the Chiefs clearly took their foot off the pedal. It maybe sort of almost cost them. It really wasn't as close as the score suggests. But every week with Brady, it's just say, this team's going to the Super Bowl, or, what are they doing? And there's no in between. And we kind of expected that with all the hype of him going to Tampa. But was this more about how good the Chiefs are, or how dysfunctional the Bucs are?
Well, I can't tell you how much. I think you nailed it on the head with everything. It's Bucs are going to the Super Bowl, or they're missing the playoffs, which is amazing. We've won.
Yep.
Also, what you said about the Chiefs, it's amazing to me how much talk. I mean, it was like, that I don't know, maybe there's some sort of venting of frustrations, but I felt like the media felt the need to bash both the Chiefs and the Bucs. They said the Bucs are bad, and they are, if making the playoffs, look like a team that's in total shambles. Bruce Arians and Tom Brady are feuding every second. Which is great, which they didn't talk about, is, Antonio Brown is just minding his own business. not complaining about lack of catches or anything else going on right now. So that's 1 week down. When it comes to the Chiefs, they're talking about how they keep flipping on and off this light switch. They don't know how to play 60 minutes of football. When I think you look at the scoreboard and you look at the stat sheet, that's what it looks like. But in reality, I actually thought the game was over by that second Hill touchdown. And it's just amazing how quickly they can jump out on you. I mean, name me the team that gains 400 yards at the half and doesn't take their foot off the gas. It was a Chiefs win and really just a incredible job by, in my opinion, the best team in the AFC. And I know Pittsburgh is 10-0, but this is really something special right now.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs, nobody's playing as well as the Chiefs. Obviously, that one hiccup against Vegas, and I'm happy that I called them Vegas and not Oakland. But, the Raiders anyway, that one. And that second game was great. I think the Raiders are showing that they might, they're coming up. Sometimes teams come out of nowhere. Sometimes teams introduce themselves before they kick the door in. I think this year is the Raiders kind of introducing themselves that, hey, we don't suck anymore. We might not be Chiefs good, but somewhere in the middle. But I don't think anyone's played as consistently. You obviously have Pittsburgh, and really it just comes down to actually about 20 minutes before coming on here. I don't know if you saw the game with the Ravens had now been bumped to Wednesday night. So,
wow.
so that's a little bit of breaking news on here. We don't usually get to handle that stuff, but that's how it worked out. We had a Tuesday night football earlier in the year, but to my knowledge, this will be the first Wednesday night game that I'm familiar with.
Shoot, you are the historian, but I would be right alongside you with Wednesday night. But, that's just the way things go. Already seeing doubleheaders. This is actually kind of cool territory to see the NFL test new different weeks and days to see, maybe people, this sticks, maybe doubleheaders on Saturday sticks. Maybe something on Monday doubleheader or something on Wednesday or Friday works.
I kind of like because we always usually have it the first week of the year, the doubleheader Monday Night Football. They always do the real prime time, and then like a Denver or a West Coast game will be on afterwards. So I enjoy the doubleheader on a Monday, even if with the one game starting at like 5, they had to do earlier this year, and then the normal 8:30. Because when it's just the one game and it is Monday night, people got to work. 8:30 is kind of late to start a game, in my opinion. Like very few people stay up for the whole thing for obvious reasons. So I think either you start that game earlier or the doubleheader is kind of nice.
I mean, it's late over here. That's 3 hours on the Pacific time for you East Coasters. But, it's unfortunate for the Steelers to have to prepare so long for one opponent that you're doing your job. It's the second straight time, where an opponent's had to reschedule. They don't get a bye week early in the year. They get a bye week earlier and have to do all this. So very unfortunate, and it sure would. Now, they have no business losing to Baltimore, but it sure would be unfortunate if the Steelers go into a little bit of a tailspin down the stretch of the year, lose a game, lose 2 games, and start to have those questions, feeling as though the momentum got crushed. Really, really unfortunate because they're playing some very good football. In fact, they remind me a whole lot of a couple years ago, the Panthers go on that incredible run, and they are 13-0, 14-0, and they just fly under the radar, and that's the Steelers all over again.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned it. This isn't the first time they've dealt with this because they had the issue with the Titans, and they have to have the early bye week because of it. So for a team that hasn't had any COVID outbreaks, they've dealt with more COVID than most other teams. Fun little game here. Now, let's assume this Baltimore game gets played Wednesday and things kind of get back on track. I think a lot of us would pick Pittsburgh to win. They're favored by 10 as I look here now. The remaining schedule is Washington football team, the Bills, the Bengals, the Colts, and the Browns. I only see 2 really tough games left, being the Bills and the Colts, and probably the Bills being the worst one if they get past the Ravens. What percentage chance are you giving the Steelers to finish the year undefeated?
Pretty good. Before I get into that, though, I think it's amazing on the flip side of that schedule. Baltimore, as of now, if I'm not mistaken, has a scheduled game this coming Monday against Dallas. That is a very quick 5-day turnaround. They are, I believe, at home against are they home against Steelers on Wednesday?
No, it's in Pittsburgh.
It's in Pittsburgh, and then they come back to play the Cowboys in a couple of days.
I've heard something about that game getting moved to the next month. I don't know. stuff. I don't even want to comment because by the time this episode's done, they might have changed it. So yeah, that schedule will probably get messed up a little bit still.
Sure. To me, though, to speak about the Steelers thing again, is I agree the Colts is a tough one, but the Browns in the final game of the year, because it's a division matchup, and Cleveland, I know they aren't a 8-3 team. They nearly lost to Jacksonville today. That is insane.
Yeah.
Because the Chargers, and, at some point we may get to it. I'm a big Charger guy. But the Chargers, they have for the last couple of years known, we may be the football team. We can count on beating the Jaguars. They almost lost to those guys. So, but I believe Cleveland's a tough matchup for them because they match them up at the line of scrimmage. And that running game is really something special. So, and it's a division game. So I give the Steelers, in my opinion, about a 50-50 chance of going undefeated. I know looks like a pretty easy schedule, but going undefeated in the NFL, something that has been done very few and far in between, is just unprecedented. And this doesn't feel like the team that could do that, even though they're off to an incredible start.
I think 50% is fair. I'd put them in the 40 to 50% range. I will say that if they didn't have these scheduling oddities, I would maybe bump that number to like 60%. But given what they're dealing with off the football field and these scheduling oddities, I'd put them about there. You mentioned that game in Cleveland. That game could either be a huge game or mean nothing at all. Because let's say the Steelers trip up against Buffalo and then they still kind of have the regular season locked up. They might not play anyone against Cleveland. So that game could either mean a lot or very little.
Yes, and also that brings back the Chiefs' point. Imagine if either the Chiefs go on a run and then they would have the tiebreaker over Pittsburgh, or they have a situation where the Chiefs cruise. And because that 1 seed is very important and now even more important because of the 1 bye. So, I mean, it's just hard to say, but I think by that week 17 game, it seems to happen every year where a lot of the top seeds, they're cruising into the playoffs. It's just as long as you don't bench your guys. I think we've learned that too many times. And one of the most recent points I can think of was Dallas the last time somehow that they were a top seed in the playoffs. When you bench your guys, it almost never works out.
Yeah, and I do think with them, the other thing with the Chiefs you mentioned, I like this whole new playoff system. We haven't seen it in practice yet, but in theory, I enjoy the fact of only the top seed gets the bye week because it finally rewards you for being one of the top 2 seeds. A lot of other sports, soccer, basketball in other countries, the regular season first place holder, that's a championship in itself. The NFL's not like that. We understand that, but it at least rewards you for that. So it might take a little bit to get used to that extra playoff team, but I love the concept of, hey, the only way you're getting home field is to be the number 1. You don't get to lax at number 2. And it is funny to go from, 9, 10, 12, 13 wins might not be enough to win a division to all the way to the NFC East where 6 wins might lock that bad boy up. And, I think the last time we were on here, it seemed obvious that it was Eagles-Cowboys, almost like it always is, right? And the Eagles play tonight against Seattle, and I haven't watched it yet, but I got a feeling it's not going to be pretty. So that might start putting them on the descent out of that. And the Redskins and Giants have decided to wake up. I see. Yeah, the football team, whatever. But Washington and New York have both realized that they're still in this. I think as we speak right now, New York is in the lead, but I got to say Washington is the most consistent. Not that they're good, but they're the most consistent team, and they might mess around and win this division with 6 wins.
Yeah, I mean, any more than 6, and I'd be stunned. I think that's the record. That's the number you got to get to. And I think that's almost the mathematical number you have to get to because everybody still plays each other. So It's amazing to me. I don't know if you wanted to say any more than what you said about the 1 bye system right now in each of these conferences because that changed for this year. It killed 2 birds with 1 stone because it rewards regular season play, people fighting to the end. We had too many teams resting guys the week before the playoffs, which hurt them a lot. I think the Ravens could have been better served. Having somebody nip on their heels last year, the last couple of weeks, they probably would have been, less rusty for the playoffs against the Titans, 1. And then 2, it solves the problem of every third, fourth year having a very good 10-6 team missing the postseason because they weren't a top 2 wild card club. So that eliminates that problem. And now, to your point, the only problem I think we have is one division every third or fourth year always seems to have 4 terrible teams. I have a theory on it. I think in order to solve that, you have the top 3 division winners earn a home game, and then that 4 through 7, you know how 5 and 7 is wild card. I think that 4th has got to become a wild card. And you're just like everybody else if you're not a top 3 division winner. That's my solution to it, but who knows what the NFL's thinking.
I mean, I could see that potentially working. I flash back to 2007 when the Buccaneers and Giants played that wild card weekend. The Bucs had the Giants were the better record. They were 10-6, and the other was 9, something like that. But basically, the division winner got the home playoff game, even though the record of the wild card team was better, is how it ended up breaking down. So, there are things that can be changed. The interesting thing about this, I'm curious what the first division is going to be, because it's mathematically possible now for all 4 teams in one division to make the playoffs. So that would be very interesting if that ever happened. I don't think that's happening this year. I think everything's a little too mushed together. But if this keeps up, we could eventually see a time where everyone in one division makes the playoffs. That would be the bragging rights. That answers the question of who's the toughest division. Well, if all my teams made the playoffs, it's got to be them,
Right, for sure. And outside, not Atlanta anymore. When you look at the NFC, the 16 teams, the bottom 4 are all the NFC East.
Right. So we easily know what the worst one is. But I do at the moment, I would pick Washington to win the division and I remember tweeting this. It was either last year or the year before when Alex Smith got hurt. Before he got hurt, I was like, all these teams suck. Washington might just mess around and win the division. And it was going that way. And then Alex Smith got hurt. And obviously it's great to see him back, win, lose, or draw, just the fact that he gets to play football again. And if you're a Washington football team fan, I think he's better than Dwayne Haskins anyway. So you're probably happy that he's back for 2 reasons.
Well, they win the NFL Story of the Year award with Alex Smith coming back, with this team having the drama of having to change their name, and then Ron Rivera dealing with cancer seemingly on a weekly basis and fighting through that. So this is an incredible story, and I really would be excited to see them win it. And listen, you're an Eagles fan saying Washington would probably win this thing, even though Philly's right there. They just have to take care of business, which I don't give much of a chance for tonight.
Right. And no, it's wide open. It's just a matter of who will, who's going to actually capitalize on that whole thing. Before we transition to college football, I want to do one more touch on. We talked about the Chiefs a lot with that Bucs game, but I do want to let us talk about Brady there for a minute. Do you think that this is – I don't know if you consider this a success. I mean, the team is better than it was last year. So if that's the only goal, then you got to say yes. But what do you think is Tampa's problem right now? And it seems that they can beat the bad teams. They can play the average teams even. But, they get smoked by these good teams. And I think that might just let us know that's where they are.
Yeah, it was a pretty concerning sight to see them struggle to beat the Giants a few weeks ago. That was the last win before them losing 3 or 4 here. The Bucs do not look like the team that I picked to make it to the Super Bowl. I'm still sticking by that selection. I still think that Tom Brady figures out a way to shake off some of the culture, but it's becoming pretty evident here that this is not the Patriots culture. I mean, to think that the Patriots are only 2 wins worse with the Brady bunch having so much talent that if, Andy Reid got a hold of them, or if they had a better culture, could probably win almost every game. I mean, they just on paper beat every team, and they're losing some of them, and it's not even close. I think it's concerning against the good teams, but I think right now talent's not the issue. It's a lack of continuity from players to coaches. I still believe, though, it doesn't look good right now, but I still believe there's something about Brady. There's something about just the overwhelming sheer talent they have and the quarterback who we may talk about by the time Brady's career is over. We promised to have that Brady-Montana debate, right?
Yep.
At some point, stick around here on the podcast. I believe that he'll figure out a way. I mean, it's just it doesn't make sense, but I think he'll figure out a way to kind of right this ship here in the next couple of weeks.
I mean, you mentioned, that talent's not the issue. I think the execution of the talent might be the issue. I mean, no matter whether you're a New England fan or a Brady fan or whatever, I think anyone with eyeballs realizes that Brady's downfield ball, one, isn't what it used to be, and even when it wasn't his game. I mean, I'm not a big stat guy, but, Pro Football Focus explains a deep pass as anything that's traveled 20 yards in the air. This season, Brady has completed one of 21 attempts that fit that description. So, yes, you have these great receivers. You have Godwin and Evans. Antonio Brown is kind of figuring it out. Gronk catches a big ball every once in a while. But Brady's a dink and dunk guy. That's why a guy like Scotty Miller, we now know his name. I think they need to, yes, these guys can go deep and beat people. But if Brady can't deliver the ball, I think you have to take those 20-yard routes and turn them into 8-yard routes, and then Brady can move the ball. I think they need to be a little more self-awareness would go a long way. And I commend Bruce Arians for not just bending everything at the whim of Tom Brady and being like, if you're coming here, you're going to run my stuff to an extent. But there is a point that you have to know what you have and use it correctly.
Yeah, they also have an issue with the running consistency with Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette, which is actually a surprise to me, considering how talented that offensive line is, especially the left side. I figured they'd be much farther along running the ball than now because teams are playing the deep ball a lot, especially the Chiefs with the too high stuff. They'd force you to run it, and the Bucs against just four-man fronts could not push the line of scrimmage. So that is a concern to me. That's something where Brady can be excellent, but if he has to play every playoff game, shotgun set 4 receivers, and teams can pin their ears back, I think that'll be pretty challenging.
Yeah, that's not a situation you want to put him in. And regardless of how your quarterback is playing, they can at least be happy that they have one, which is not something we could say about the Denver Broncos this past week in what has to be one of the weirdest. I can't think of anything like this. The closest thing I can imagine is, for those that watch NFL films have probably heard about this. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I forget the year, it's an Eagles-Redskins game called the body bag game where every quarterback on the Redskins got knocked out. Brian Mitchell, the running back, has to play quarterback. That's one thing if it happened to injuries, but at the start of a game, to not have an active quarterback on your roster is absolutely insane. And for the guy that ended up using, Kendall Hilton, he was a wide receiver / quarterback at Wake Forest, and he was on the practice squad, and he ended up going in to play that game. They ran a lot of Wildcat with Phillip Lindsay and guys like that, which I would have done the exact same thing. If you have to deal with this, at least try and be creative about it. And of course, he got crushed on the internet because he didn't throw for 1,000 yards and whatever. But I mean, I commend the guy for like, granted that was his first NFL action, being called up from the practice squad. But to answer the call, I think was commendable for him to even attempt to play in that game.
Yeah, it sure looked a lot like every Thanksgiving here in these neck of the woods. It was ugly. It was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You got to commend them. And there was just no chance they were winning that game. The fact that I didn't put any wager on it is something I'm kicking myself at right now. That was about as a predictable a result. And Phil knows about predictable NFL games. It's about as predictable as I've seen.
Yeah, and it's funny with Taysom Hill playing, like, yes, he's a quarterback, but also not really. So of all teams to play, it was interesting that they got to play the Saints with the Swiss Army knife as quarterback, let alone, instead of Drew Brees or another, comparable quarterback. So I definitely checked out more of that game than I would have had this not been the case. It was definitely a storyline worth looking at, and I commend the guy for playing. Obviously, it did not go well for Denver, and I think that I think by next week their quarterbacks should be back. A little note that if they couldn't bring this guy up, their other plan of attack is they wanted their quarterback coach, Rob Calabrese, who's actually a former quarterback at UCF, he was going to start for that game. And the NFL told them no, that they weren't allowed to activate a coach to an active player, which if you ever wondered if that was possible, apparently the answer is no. But that's the only way that would have made this story better. If a guy puts his clipboard down and grabs his helmet, that would have been quite the story.
Right. Yeah. Where'd you find that in the rule book? Or how'd you figure that one out?
I would imagine it's like the Air Bud effect, where it's like there's no rule that says he can't, so he can. So I would imagine they made up some BS thing. I don't know how it couldn't have been better than a practice squad guy playing. I don't know what the difference would be. Because clearly if you're even looking at that option, your quarterback room isn't doing great. So, like, it's clearly not a first case scenario. It's a worst case scenario thing. But no, it was interesting, and big ups to that guy for even attempting it there. As we move some college football here, this week was so strange. So, like, with UCF playing on Friday, the War on I-4 beating USF for the fourth straight time, it felt like a Saturday to me because I'm watching my school, right? So then Saturday comes, and it felt like this elongated college football Saturday, which is always a great thing. So I watched plenty of games this week. We had the Nick Sabanless Iron Bowl, which, still went about as well as you'd expect. And he, talked about screaming at his TV and everything. And I don't know if you have anything to say on that game, but that was pretty well in hand, Nick Saban or not.
Yeah, it's just another one of those Alabama wins. It looks pretty amazing considering how many weeks off Alabama's had. And, just how every year they transition a new quarterback. At some point, we'll bring up Heisman talk, and that kid playing for Alabama is right up there. Jacksonville native, by the way, Mac Jones.
Oh, okay. All right. The other big note I would say is Penn State getting their first win over Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. It seems like we got to talk about it every time, but is this Harbaugh's last year in Michigan?
I know, we have to talk about it. That's when leading college football shows isn't, who's in the playoff picture, but Michigan. And believe it or not, I actually think that Harbaugh will come back for one more year because I feel like there's and listen, I wouldn't do it, but I just think there's too much behind him and there's too much money on the line for them to just let him go and pay him all that money. So I think Jim Harbaugh lasts another year. They put this on COVID. They put this on no off season, whatever you want to put in front of it. When people look at the products, look at the regression of his quarterbacks, look at the regression of the recruiting in the state of Michigan and the rise of a lot of other schools from around the area, I mean, it points to the commander-in-chief. And it's very unfortunate to say that Michigan was a block punt against Michigan State, away from a win there. There were some very, very unfortunate calls here or there, bounces from making the playoff in his first year or two. But, that's the way it goes in college football. You got to keep rolling. And right now, I think he's wearing thin like he did in a lot of other programs.
I do think I agree with the fact that it's hard to fire coaches in this COVID climate right now. I think not that this would be the year necessarily either, but I think Scott Frost falls in that boat too at Nebraska that, things aren't going great, but this is not the year to let go of people unless you're Matt Patricia, in which case they boot you out right after Thanksgiving dinner. But
That's right.
Or the Jags GM, I forgot his name, but they did get rid of him yesterday too. But in general,
Khan, something like that. Yeah.
What's that?
Saad Khan, I think.
That's the owner. That's the owner.
Okay.
But yeah, the GM's gone basically. But yeah, as far as coaches go, it is hard to blame it on them. It's like if you like the guy, you easily use it as a reason to keep him around, and if you don't, you can maybe brush him out the door. But I think one more year. I think Harbaugh needs a normal year of mediocrity for them to finally do it, not a year like this. And I was happy for Penn State to get the win because for some reason that Jim Franklin seat was getting a little warm too. I mean, he's had great Penn State teams since he's been there, but to start 0-5 for the first time in program history was not a good look. And so hopefully this win against Michigan helps them salvage their season towards the end here.
Yeah, pretty insane. Because we have a native UCF ticket holder, and we have our season ticket holder, and we have such an avid fan of the Knights. I have to bring up, this year is going a lot off kilter, and I think, just looking at the way the UCF has played in that conference, I think if they had a full off season, considering how sluggish they were in defensively to start, they look like a totally different team now. I think that would have boded well for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, the defense still obviously, yes, we did beat South Florida, and we are the War on I-4 champs for the fourth year in a row, but to give up was 46 points to South Florida was not the way to look at. By the way, James Franklin, not John Franklin, for Penn State's head coach. I totally blubbed that up a second ago. So I wanted to fix that. Second off my lips, I'm like, that's not the dude's first name. So I had to double check that. But yeah, so I hope things turn around with him in Happy Valley. But yeah, as far as us, we're in a weird situation with the Knights now is our regular season is over, and you would imagine with 6 wins we would qualify for a bowl game, but we wouldn't have a game to play for a whole month basically if we play in one of these early, bowl games that the American is affiliated with. And obviously, we've won plenty of American championships before. This is not our year for that. Cincinnati looks like the team that they're playing the role of UCF this year as the group of five, as much as I hate the term team, to potentially crash the playoffs. So in the moment, we can technically sign another game for not this week, but the week after if we give ourselves enough time. But unless we get like a Miami on the phone and they're dumb enough to come down here and get their butts whooped, like I don't think we're gonna get another game. So it's gonna be weird waiting a whole month to play a lower level bowl game. But that looks like the situation we're in. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that really shakes out.
Do you think Cincinnati has a chance to upset the apple cart in either a New Year's Six or a playoff game?
Well, New Year's Six definitely. And here's the thing, and not to sound bitter, but like we played Cincinnati and we lost by 3, and we are still working things out. And the way we played them, like Cincinnati is good. I don't think they're quite as good as those really good UCF teams or those really good Boise State teams before us. Even I think they're great. I think they're easily the best team, not in this made up extra division that people have invented for themselves. So
yeah,
I think New Year's Six, you can give them Florida or Texas or one of those, and they'd have a chance to Oklahoma or whatever, and they could hang with them in the playoff situation. I think on paper their resume is as good as any. So if they get to that point, it'd be good for them. They would obviously be walking over the bridge that was laid from other teams. But if one team gets in, it opens the floodgates. So I think college football wins when you don't create this elitist, like made up top division when every team in this in Division I football is just that, Division I. So they should all be, you got College Game Day is about to be at Coastal Carolina next week. Like
wow.
The situation is changing. People understand that there's good football in other places except the SEC, so that part I'm happy about, that people are finally enjoying. Liberty's ranked, Coastal Carolina, as I mentioned, is ranked. Lafayette was ranked until a loss, midway through the year. So I think these smaller teams are at least getting the credit that they deserve, whether it's a playoff team or not. They're at least, good football exists all over the country. And I think we're finally starting to recognize that as a country. So, good ups there.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, unfortunate for certain big schools like USC. For instance, I could speak to how they didn't land a top 25 recruit in the state of California. That is unprecedented. And as much as that speaks to the futility of the program, it also speaks to how, teams like San Diego State are on the rise in Southern California. A lot of other mid-major programs are making themselves known as an elite top 25 team. I see by this day and age as many top 40 programs football year that are not Pac-12, that are Big Ten and SEC, which is just amazing. In fact, outside, the ACC case this year, if Notre Dame wasn't there, an independent school, I mean, you have definitely, if the American played the ACC, I give the American a good chance up and down. To be as good as those guys.
Right. And with Notre Dame in the ACC this year, I'm interested to see if that's something that ends up sticking. My thought is Notre Dame just always wants to be independent and they'll find a way back out. But it's been good seeing them, I think, where they are. They fit the ACC more than I thought. I always pictured them as a Big Ten school if they were to ever join a conference. But, it's just they fit well in basketball and stuff in the ACC. So that's where that's going to sit, I guess. But the last big college football note of the week, really, and of recent note, was of all places at Vanderbilt, where they had a female soccer player, goalkeeper of all. When I first heard this, because this isn't foreign for a couple other women have played college football, and at my local high school we actually had a female kicker that was a soccer player the past 2-3 years. I think Sammy Fernandez was her name, if I remember correctly. So it's not a total new thing, but when I learned that this was a goalkeeper doing it, of all people, you think it'd be that striker that has a monster of a leg or something. But Sarah Fuller coming to the aid of her team with a lot of negativity from a lot of the internet, but a lot of positivity for normal thinking people. But for her to, yes, all she did was go and kick the ball off. We didn't know this. Vanderbilt's a very bad team. They're 0-8, and plus they've been struck by COVID. This was not done in a way to just let her go out and kick a 50-yard field goal and celebrate. This was done out of necessity, and much like the Kendall Hinton story about Denver, like the football team went to the soccer programs and said, hey, who can we have as a kicker? And for her to step up, I think is extremely commendable. And everybody's complaining about the squib kick the one time she got on the field. And I assume that was done so that she wasn't in the field of play to have to make a tackle. So, like, I think it was done smartly to, squib it right down the middle. They got it about 35, which is about where they'd get it if there was any sort of return on a normal kick, probably. So, granted, this is not Disney movie worthy necessarily, but I think this is someone that's proud of her school, that plays a different sport, that wants to, when the call was given, she answered the call, and I think that's really commendable. And the people that are being negative about it, I wonder what's going on in their life that makes them so upset about somebody helping out their school. It was great to see, and I assume they have one game left. I don't see the score being much different because it is against Georgia, but I assume she'll be at that game too, so maybe she'll get a chance to kick a field goal at some point, extra point or something. So I'm interested to see. I'll tell you what, it makes me want to watch Vanderbilt a whole lot more than I did prior to this. So that is a plus. But I never saw this as a publicity stunt. I think it was someone helping their school, and that's how a lot of people should look at it, I think.
Just an incredible story. I mean, I think you put it eloquently right there that, this is a new age, man, 2020, but just in general to see, the African-American community, have major power in so many different industries. This is something that speaks to the desperation to bring respect for Black. I can speak of Black coaches and general managers that the NFL imposed to a lot of teams to bring in a Black coach and have him sent off to another NFL team as to be their head coach. Teams that recruited the guy, teams that developed the coach to become a head coach are awarded something like a third-round draft pick nowadays. There was a blowout a couple weeks ago on that. So, this is today. It's an amazing day in sports to see women out there playing college at a Power 5 school, and also to see NFL teams be rewarded to recruit these different coaches. We just saw an all-Black officiating group. We've seen women officiate NFL as well. So just an amazing time to see every gender and see every race be involved in collegiate and professional sports.
You broke up there towards the end. I think you mentioned, and even the addition of female coaches in the NFL too. I think that was that last bit that you had said. But yeah,
coaches and officials.
Yes,
there have been some. So,
but yeah, it's great that because women can love football too, just as much as us, and more so in some cases. So like for them to be able to find roles in the game, whether it's on the field in this very unique instance, or in the GM roles, I believe the Marlins hired a female GM, the first one in baseball recently. So I think that was great. I mean, the more, the XFL is now half owned by a female with, Dwayne Johnson and his wife. So, that's another situation. But no, I thought it was a great story, and hopefully she gets a chance to, kick a few more balls against Georgia next week. So we'll see how that goes. But to go from the gridiron to the hardwood, college basketball has technically started. I know UCF tips off tonight here in a little while against Auburn. Not that we'll get super deep into it, but maybe it's because we didn't get March Madness this past year, but I'm itching for some college basketball. Like, I'm really looking forward to some stuff. And just how do you feel about, college basketball being back, and the decision already being made that March Madness will be in a bubble type format in Indianapolis. So they do already have that figured out. So they shouldn't take March Madness from us again. So as we close out here, how do you feel about college basketball being back?
Yeah, I feel pretty great. You mentioned to me beforehand, it's not a basketball season until Kentucky loses. They did it a whole lot sooner than I would have predicted. It's also not a college basketball season before my Kansas Jayhawks lose, and they suffered a loss on opening night too. So we're in full swing. I'm looking forward to seeing it, and it's fun.
Yeah, no, we'll be good. Like I said, I'm looking forward to UCF versus Auburn tonight. I tend to casually follow Duke a little bit too. I'll probably watch some of their games once the ACC season gets going. UCF gets to play Florida State in basketball this year, so I might have a few friendly bets with some Seminole friends of mine. That'll be interesting. UCF did just get their first 5-star recruit in the history of their basketball program. So I'm interested to see him play. But again, it must just be because we didn't get March Madness. But I'm excited for some college basketball this year.
Yeah, also, I'd be itching for, I believe it's next year, Howard signed a 5-star recruit too. First HBCU do that. I don't know if you knew that.
I did.
Top flight. Right. I believe that's next year though, correct?
Yeah, that'll be for next – or, well, it might be because they're playing in the spring. And, I think there's going to be more eyes on HBCU football, also with the addition of Deion Sanders coaching Jackson State and his son going there. So keep your eye in February. We're going to get some football in February. That's going to be pretty sweet.
Yeah, pretty nuts in the next year XFL. I think football in spring could be here to stay, depending on how it looks. I think it'll look pretty sweet.
How crazy – and for those that maybe are newer listeners, Nick used to be the radio voice for the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats, obviously one of the more prominent HBCU programs when it comes to football and other sports. Would it be a crazy idea if, let's say, this whole program does gangbusters with, which obviously Cookman isn't playing, but other HBCUs are. Imagine if that brand of football just moves to February and they get all eyes on them. Would that be a crazy thought to separate themselves from the rest of college football? Because they're kind of on an island as they are. Every once in a while, they'll play one of those, money games against a big school. But in general, they're very isolated. So it wouldn't be that crazy, I don't think.
Boy, that is a crazy opinion because of those money games. I mean, how many more eyeballs would be on them in spring that would not be on them playing Power 5, playing, the best schools in the area. So hard to say. Maybe there's an option where you could be their lame duck before Alabama is off, in late November or something. So
right.
It would be interesting for sure. It is such a crazy idea, Phil. I cannot even imagine what the results would be. I do believe that there would be balls on it though, but there have been other crazy things like the arena leagues or whatnot, and the different football leagues that for some reason I just don't. I have a tough time, trying to put together how these things couldn't work out, and for some reason it. But it'll be great to see it in the spring and give it a year test.
Well, as far as that whole situation, it comes down to how it works in February. If no extra eyes go on it, then it's not even, a discussion. It's just something to, what if they double their ratings because they're not competing against an SEC game on the same Saturday is what it would come down to. But no, it's definitely a crazy thought, but I'm curious, these guys want, especially now with guys like Deion Sanders, coaching and 5 stars going to an HBCU and stuff like that whole situation could turn. But I think that's just about it for us today.
Before we go, I got to say one more thing. If you missed the entire podcast until right now, the message is, as crazy as 2020 has been, this is the year where HBCUs are getting more than SEC schools, where women are kicking off for Power 5 programs, where we have black coaches and we have black officials and we have black general managers getting as many opportunities to be awarded for those as white people and of other ethnicities. I mean, this is a nuts year, but it's not all bad. I think this is really cool change, and I'm looking forward to seeing sports evolve over this year.
Yeah, we definitely have some silver linings to be thankful for in the sports world after it completely, being taken out for a few months. But overall, everyone enjoy. We got Monday Night Football tonight, which I don't think is going to be super competitive, but I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. Steelers and Ravens will be sometime this week, and in the meantime, enjoy some college basketball because it's back. So thank you guys for listening to the Phil Talk Sports Podcast, and we'll see you next time.